to the Yeshiva Shalmaila. This is David Lichtenstein. I was traveling a little bit for the last 2 weeks, so I had two very, Chashiver Abanim sit in for me. But this week, I did my interviews on the road. Klal Yisrael has a portable homeland. Wherever the Torah is, that's our homeland. So I actually have, a lot of times I'll write a chabur and I'll write, this was written from in the airport in Japan, in a hotel in China. So this week's actually did the interviews on a plane, on a boat, faraway places. And the topic is racism. We hear about it in the news. St. Louis, the South, shootings, now with Eric Garner in New York City. What is the Torah Hashkafah and Halacha and Hashkafah about racism? Are Frum people, are we allowed to be racist? If you hear somebody use the N-word or some other derogatory word that some people use, do we say, well, Eisav, Soneh, Yaakov? Do we say Or Kenan? Do we say Amadoim Lechamoir? Or alternatively, do we say Ki B'Tselem Elokim Asa Es Ha'adam? Right? What does Ramban say on the pasuk like Solon of Lasei Al Eitz? He says because the Dmus of Kaviyachal is hanging on an eitz. Imagine insulting the Dmus of Kaviyachal, right? Do we say Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem? And this is a debate. Now, I think that when I went to yeshiva, this debate didn't occur much because in the shadow of the Holocaust, it was really hard to look at the Germans and say that they were B'Tselem Alekim. And it's interestingly, on the mission of Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem, the Taisus Yamtiv brings, I believe it's the Taisus Yamtiv, says, when is he Chaviv, this Adam was Nivra B'Tselem? When he's Mekayim Zayin Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, when he's a mensch. When he's a para Adam, he could lose his tzelem, the Taisus Yamtiv writes, and that's what happened in World War II. But now we live in a more kindly world. So do we say, what is our hashkafah? Do we say Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem? Do we say Leisalon of Lasei Al Eitz? Esther was punished according to some for it because even Amalek she wasn't allowed to be. She kept them on the Eitz for many days. So we say Ki B'Tselem, or do we say Fakert? So is our attitude towards many of, we've heard Rabbanim, we've heard our teachers occasionally maybe say things that today would not be considered appropriate. Is it stuff that is remnants of the Holocaust, remnants of the Romans, the Greeks, the Crusaders, the Gzeres Tachtat, Chalmanetsky Yamach Shemai, it's the Inquisition if you're a Sephardi, etc., etc.? Or is it just a remnant, but we really are? Or on the contrary, there is no issur of racism? That's what we're going to be debating. And we have on with us three very chashuv rabbanim. We have Reb Usher Yoel Labin, a Talmid of Williamsburg, a Rav in Tom's River. We have the spokesperson for many years for Skver, Rabbi Schiller, an author, a lecturer, spokesperson for the Skver community in New Square. He was a Rebbe in both Beis Shraga and Yeshivas Rabbi Yitzchok. We have from Eretz Yisrael, Mordechai Yitzchok Friedman, a Talmid of Rabbi Moshe, the Keysmaker Rav Forhand. That's going to be a little bit of a lively conversation. And then we have a black from a Jew who goes under the pen name Nishtanah. He's a teacher, a rabbi, a lecturer. He's a writer. So it should be and he personally will tell us about his experiences with racism. It should be a very interesting program. And it's interesting because, the Yidden by many are considered racist. But in the debates between the Ramban and other Rishonim against Christianity, which happened in, the 11th, 12th, 13th centuries, they said, Fakert. Klal Yisrael believes that a Goy can have a chelik la'olam haba. In fact, the Rambam writes even more. When the famous Rambam writes about Lo shevet Levi v'Robad el kol boy olam, so the Mefarshim explain what's boy olam, right? Could be boicher to be kodesh kadashim, could be boicher to be like shevet Levi and become kodesh kadashim. Kol boy olam refers to Goyim as well. When else do we use the lashon of boy olam? So kol boy oivrim lefanav kivnei marayin and esanetaykim is talking about literally kol boy olam. So we believe that a guy can become kodesh kadashim. So how is it? Is racism allowed, or do we say no? They're tzelem alekim. they could be Kodesh Kadashim. That is the discussion. Now, before we go to our discussion, I do want to say a little word on the Parsha. And this week is one of the most mystical Parshas in the Torah, Mamish. When you look at it, you just don't know what to make of it. The Parsha of Egla Rufa, Ki Matzei Cholol Ba'adama. You find a corpse. Neufil Basada. An abandoned corpse. Loi Noidam Mihiko. What killed it? Who killed it? Why did it die? So what does it say? V'yatzuz keinecha v'shoiftecha. The Gedolei Sanhedrin, the Gemara says. Reb Chaim Kanievsky they bring out. They would have brought out Rav Moshe, Rav Shach, and they measure it. V'hoyo ira kroivel achol, the closest city. V'lakhu if they find, they measure to which city. And zikna ira hi eglas bakar asher loy ubadba, an eglas bakar that was never used. And what do Chazal say? Are you choishish that the zikna here did something? Avada not, but to give seriousness and gravitas to this. Now, who is this person, this mysterious person? So what does Rashi say? They take an eglas bakar asher loyi ovid by the loyi zareya that never was used to make a furrow for seed, was never used, and they said, let this egla be a kapara for this person who never saw fruition, who never accomplished anything. This young calf should be a kapara for this soul, this corpse that never reached its journey, that was never moitzi peiros. Lo yizareaba. So it seems we're talking about a person who's a younger person, a dead young person. Does that sound familiar? Right? Ask Reb Tzvi, so many dead young people we have. Right? And what is it? He says it never accomplished anything. And what do the Zikna answer? People have to swear. They have to say, we did not send him without Oichel or Levaya. Lo Yadana Mihiko. We don't know who. And they say, no, it wasn't us. We send everybody with food and with Levaya. In other words, if they would have sent without food and without Levaya, we would now know Mihiko, who is guilty. Which is very strange. I mean, the fact that they didn't send a guy from the city with Levaya and with food is the reason why he shows up dead in the outskirts of their city. And a young person, unaccomplished, like story, is missing coherence. And I think it's a very relevant story. And let me tell you a modern twist on this story and why it's so negeya bizmanenu. You know, there's a theory in policing called broken windows policing. A fellow James Wilson wrote about it. And New York City used to have triple the murders it had today. I don't know if you guys remember, you're young. But then we had a police chief, Bratton, and he said, we're going to start now broken policing. You know, when you see a broken window, it has to be fixed. Graffiti, removed within 24 hours. And what's the theory? There's a broken window. The next thing, some shmeiga sees an open window, some felon, he says, oh, this is a good place to spray graffiti. It's covered with graffiti. Somebody else says, hi, this is a good place to bring a stolen car. Oh, now there's a car on 4, with the hubcaps missing, unjacked up. Oh, this is probably a good place to do drugs. Oh, this is a good place to mug somebody. This is a good place for a murder. It starts with a broken window, and it ends with a murder. That's the cycle, and that's been adopted by many of the police forces till today in New York. What's it called? Broken windows policing. Little things spiral out of control. So what does the Torah says? Lo noida mihiko. This abandoned, sad, this corpse. Maybe he died of an overdose. Maybe he committed suicide. Who knows? Maybe he was killed it's in a gang. They called the Zikner. They said, did you give it food? Lo noida mihiko. Who's the one who's hiko? The one who didn't nourish it. Did you give it the food it need, the sustenance it need, the support it need? Did you give it levaya? What does the Rambam write about levaya in Hilchos Aval? Schar ha-levaya meruba min hakoil. It's greatest schar. What does levaya mean? I escort you. That means you're special. That means you're respected. You're not a nobody. You're a somebody. Did we do that? Or did we just let you go? You're a nobody. And you know what happens if you're a nobody? It starts without support. It starts without respect, and it starts spiraling. And the next thing, the person has a needle sticking out of the arm and they're a corpse someplace. That's the Parsha of Eglah Rufa. Do you know, there was a famous actor in Hollywood. His name was Zero Mostel, big superstar. And there was an interview about him. They said, why did you get the name Zero? He grew up in a Frum house. He said, and my father always told me, du wirst sein a garnished. Du bist a garnished, du wirst allemal sein a garnished. Right? He was a Shabbatnik, a lively fellow. His father was frustrated with him. He said, and I left. I didn't like the abuse, and I left. And I was always funny. I was able to get crowds. I was an entertainer. And I got an agent, and he said, I can make you somebody in Hollywood. And when they came to Hollywood, they said, your name can't be Zalman, you can't be Yoelish. What's your name? And I said, my father always said I'll be a Zero. So I said, my name is Zero. And that's how he got the name Zero. And he became a huge star. Because maybe he really wasn't a Zero. Maybe he was missing Oichel and Levaya. And Shlomo Carlebach said this story. He says he used to go to jails, right? And whenever he would go to jails, he would be mechazik all the Jewish prisoners. And then he had so much ahava in him. He would be mechazik the Goyish prisoners, and he would give them hugs. And he said he was in one jail, and there was one black American, an African American. He said he was like 6'6", and his muscles had muscles. He said he was terrifying looking, tattoos and muscles, and everybody he could see was scared of him. And he avoided him, and he started leaving, and suddenly this guy booms out. He says, Rabbi, no hug for me? So he turns around, and who is it? It's this huge 6'6" black American with the muscles and tattoos and the dreadlocks. He says, okay. He goes over and he gives him a hug. He says, Rabbi, I need another hug. And he gave him a big hug, a shlema. And the guy started crying. He said, Rabbi, nobody in my life ever hugged me. This is the first hug I ever got in my life. And Shlomo said, and I understood from that, maybe if he did have a few hugs, maybe he wouldn't have turned into who he was. So the question of Eglah Rufa is, were you Mekayim Levaya? Did you give Oichel to who? To that person, that anonymous? No. I'm not talking about the celebrities. Everybody wants to go up to the celebrities, hug the celebrity. Everybody wants to be the Rebbe of the Gedolim. Everybody wants to. I'm talking to nobody. The guy in Shul, nobody goes over to. Did you hug him? Did you give him Levaya? The guy who was Loizarua, he did not have seeds. He did not have, right? That's the Parsha. That's the Tfiyah of the Parsha of Eglah Rufa. And I'll say over one more story. I think I said it before, but it's such a beautiful story. Beryl Wine said over once. He said he was in a delicatessen, and he saw a guy slicing meat, and he recognized it. He was from Yeshiva, and he was there. And beautiful delicatessens. He went over, and he said to him, Avram, what a beautiful delicatessen you have. And the guy looked up, and he said, it's not my delicatessen. I just work here. I slice the meat. So he said, I wasn't paying attention. I was an idiot, he said. I blurted out. I said, but you were such a Balkishrin. So the guy stopped and looked at me, and he said, really? How come you never told me then that I was a Balkishrin? That's the Parsha of Eglah Rufa. Before we go to our wonderful guests, we're going to ask two riddles this week, and they're both going to be on the Magen Avram, Reb Abba Gambina, the great Rav, the Kalish Rav. In fact, the Meretzias later, many years later, was Rav in Kalish. And he had a guest, and I believe he brings the story, Reb Zevin. He had a guest who was a makubal, a big tzaddik called Reb Zelig Shrinska. And it was Friday night, and he used to daven very, very wrong, this holy Reb Zelig. So the Meretzias told his son, wait for him, and afterwards you'll bring him home. He'll make his own kiddush, because I can't wait. And he said he davened Friday night, 4 hours. It was ready. 11 o'clock at night, he finished. He said his son waited the whole time respectfully, and he started walking him home. And he came to a corner, and this old, elderly Reb Zelig was hunched over. He said, Vart, wait a minute. And he rested. He said, wait, noch a minute. And a few minutes later, he says, It smells here. It smells like the Garden of Eden, like an Eden. So they went back and they were mystified. So Rabbi Mordechai is called in the oldest people. They said, yeah, that corner, they say that's where Rabbi Abba Gambina wrote the Magen Avram, the great Pirush, the Magen Avram, which in Poland and Litva was considered the great Pirush on the Shulchan Aruch. So here's two things. This week we have the Parsha of Melech in Shoftim. We have the Parsha of Melech. V'haya k'shabo al kisei mamlachtei v'kasav leis Mishnah Torah v'chulu v'haisa ime v'kara by kol yemei chayav. Right? And the Medrash Sheicher Tov says, even when he slept, he never left his arm. The Medrash Sheicher Tov, Tilim Kuf Yotes, Ani Yashan v'uimi kishem sheshivisani v'haya imay v'kara by kol yamav. Even when he slept, he had to sleep holding on to the Sefer Torah. So the question is, the Magen Avram says in Siman Chaf Aleph, he brings from the Kisvei Ari, he says that you should sleep at night with a talis cotton. Many people are makbid. He brings a raya. He says, the Gemara says in Parak Daled Menachos that when David saw himself Arum bebeis hamerchat, he said, "Oili ani Arum and mitzvahs. I don't have any mitzvahs," until he saw the Milah. So the question is, what do you mean? At night, he also didn't have his talis on. So he was Arum and mitzvahs. So Magen Avram says, you see that David slept with talis cottons. He wasn't Arum and mitzvahs balayla, and that's the makor why many people sleep with a talis cotton by night. Question is, how could Pella, what do you mean that at night he wore a talis cotton and that's why it wasn't Arum and mitzvahs? Say it's because it says B'haisa imay v'kara by kol yemei chayiv, and the Medrash says he had to sleep with it. So maybe David wasn't Arum and mitzvahs because he slept holding the Sefer Torah. So watch the raya that you have to wear a talis cotton by night. Kasha on the great Magen Avram. And we'll ask another kasha on the Magen Avram from this week's Parsha. This is the kasha of the Gilyon Marsha and Yeridei Siman Chavches. He says the Shulchan Aruch paskins that somebody doesn't have offer for Kisei Adam should not make shchita. Right? The question is, the Magen Avram and Arachaim Siman Gimel says, brings from the Mordechai, that you're allowed to wear a beged shel arba kanfis on Shabbos even without tzitzis. And the Magen Avram says, why? The issue is not to put on a beged with davod kanfis. The din is, if you put on a davod kanfis, then there's a chiyuv to put tzitzis on them. So put on a beged of davod kanfis. And then there's a chiyuv to put on tzitzis. But he says, since on Shabbos it's also to put tzitzis on a beged, so you're going to be potter. So put on the beged of davod kanfis, and then there's a chiyuv tzitzis. Chiyuv tzitzis is not chal because you can't do it to your noinus. So that's why it's mutter. That's how the Magen Avram brings in Siman Gimel. The question is, why don't you say the same thing by offer? There's no din that before you shecht you have to have offer. There's a din if you shecht post shchita. There's a din of kisei adam. I shechted. There is no offer. There's no offer in our entire area. Good salmon oinus and I'm potem kisei adam. So how could the Shulchan Aruch and Siman Chaf Aleph say that misha ein lo offer is aser in shchita? Those are our two questions, our two riddles for the week. If you have an answer, call it in. We'll give a prize. I would like to say that we tried to find somebody who could give us a lucid, different opinion than our other guests. Because I say respectfully, I'm going to propose that racism using the S word, the N word, is pashut nivel peh, and it's being mevaza tzelem aleikim. And we were looking for a guest. We called many rabbanim who could maybe try to take the other side of it. So I'm humbly presenting my position on this argument. I do it b'teres efsher. If anybody has another opinion, adarabba, let them send a guest in and we'll debate it. And I also want to thank one yeshiva, it's Yeshiva Ne'os Yaakov in Lakewood, that even though we have, I think we get now around 20,000 listeners a week, but it seems that this yeshiva, the whole yeshiva must listen, because we get so many calls from them. So we thank all our Hasidim in Yeshiva Ne'os Yaakov. In fact, if you'd like, maybe we'd ask your Rosh Yeshiva to come on and on one of our programs too. Let's go to our wonderful guests.
We have on the phone with us from Lakewood, New Jersey, Rav Yoel Asher Labin, who is a Rav in Tom's Rebbe. He's a writer of articles. He's printed many articles. Welcome, Rabbi Labin.
Yeah, shalom aleichem.
So, Rabbi Labin, there's been a lot of news, articles. It goes on constantly in America, the concept of racism. Talking about either a black person or a non-Jew in a derogative way. And in fact, most of us, when we went to yeshiva, it wasn't very uncommon to hear it even from our rabbeim, which I think was understandable, given the fact that, it was the post-Holocaust generation, and terrible things happened to us in the hands of the Goyim. So the question is, if we want to talk about a black American and use a derogative or pejorative word against him, what's, in your opinion, the Hashkafah of the Torah or the Halacha against either speaking that way or teaching our children how to speak that way about somebody like that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting and a very important topic, as you said. And people have very strong feelings about that topic. Actually, I think a lot of people who left the Haredi community, or the Heimische, Yeshivische, and Hasidische communities, one of the things would be that issue. And then the other side, people feel very strongly, you can't say my grandparents were racist, or that Rabbis Tzadikim who said, used very strong language on Goyim, are racist. So it is a heated topic. But I'm sure the reason you called me is because I wrote on that. And so yeah, let's get into it. You said very well, and that's one of the main things in my article, that we can't be Madama. We can't say just the word Goyim. Every generation and every place is different. And usually the main idea is that we can't judge a whole nation because of a few, and we can't, even a country, you can't, so our parents, the way they looked at the outside world was based on their horrible experience, how the world was staying at a side when they were killed, the Charbim Iraq, Charbim Europe. So it makes a lot of sense. But now, years later, and since racism is such an important topic, it's time to revisit it. So I think that the Yisod Indian, there's a shala. What is the yichud of Am Yisrael? Is it by nature that a yid is like a different breed, a different neshama? Only a yid has a certain tzelem alekim. This is the way some would say it in Goyim are totally out. They don't have this kind of neshama, and they don't have any way of going to the after in Gan Eden or El Mabu and so on. They don't have the chances. This is the way some Rishonim would see it, but some Rishonim Nachronim say that the Yichud of Am Yisrael is because of their Torah, because of what they do. But also Chasida Yom, if they do what they need to do, their Sheva Mitzvahs, they also have a Tzelem Alekim. This is the Pashtus of Psikim. Udam Erishin, Kibbutz Tzelem Alekim, Buris Udam. We're not only talking about Eden, we're talking about all human beings. It's basically, we can say that it's the Kizri, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, is famous for saying that there's Doivim Tzemaya Chaim Medaber, and then there's Yisroel, a different level, a different Madraige B'chlal, and a lot of Sifrei Hasidus and Kabbalah are going with this Mahalach. But then there's the Rambam, who would say that we are special, we have much more achrayas, much more mitzvahs, but every human being has a Tzelem Alekim, and there's a basic cover that you have to give to all human beings, and you shouldn't think that you're a different breed. You just have more chiyuvim, more mitzvahs, and more responsibilities, and of course more capabilities to grow bigger, rachnias and hiskarvus la Hashem. But it's not that the goy is a nothing. He also has an neshama, and if he's doing his right thing, he will come to his hashlama. There's the
How do you understand, let's say,
Yeah.
Am Hadoim Lechamor, Shvulachem Payim Achamor, and others seemingly, Makaimis and Chazal that seem to be pretty, like they would call today, racist. How would you explain that?
Right. Okay, so we have to understand that with Chazal we can't pick and choose. There's a few Mamur Chazal that seems that way, but at the same time there's a lot of different Chazal whose purpose is to show us to show us the cover to everyone. So we have a lot of seeking that way, but at the same time we have the Mishnah Chovev Udam Shenivra B'Tzelem, that every person is Chovev Shenivra B'Tzelem, and there's a lot of it's interesting. In Sefer Tana D'Bai Liyui, it's one of the Sefer Chazal, there's a few times where we see that we should be Nezer and Kovet of Goyim, and that a Goy could be Nichlal B'Chlal Ra'echu, L'Sasik Es Ra'echu, a Goy would also be in B'Chlal Ra'echu, and then there's in Sefru, and then some of the Sefer Hasidus we find it, and then even the Chroinim until the last generations, and also in the Psikim, Tanakh, we have a lot of time. Ba'achris Ayum, Nuchen Yeh B'Har B'Eis Hashem B'Rosha Hurev V'Nissim Ekvuz V'Nuhari Eilav Kol HaGoyim V'Holchi Amim Rabin. We say it in Davin also, that all the Goyim would join us. We'll see that we have the right Amin, we have the right Avodah Hashem, and they will join us. The goal is not to wipe them out. The goal is to be mechabed. So there's also we have this famous Chazal of Rabbi Yochanan Zakai, that he was magdim shulam l'chol udam afil l'machri. And also, and much more powerful than that, Mefarnes Maniya Akim and Maniya Yisroel. If you have a tzedukah organization and you have $100,000, you can't just say, I'll give it to Anshe Shlamayni. If you're giving out food, you have to give to Yidden and to non-Jews. That's very powerful.
Yeah, but respectfully,
but at the same time,
that's because of Darkei Shalom. That's because of Darkei Shalom.
Okay, it's very interesting. Darkei Shalom. Not everyone understands the Darkei Shalom. The Pashtus way we see the Darkei Shalom is is like we're afraid that what will happen if not. But the Rambam brings down Darkei Shalom, like Darkei Shalom, Sheneimar HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the world to live in Shulam and in Ahava. This is a total different thing. It's not Mishem Aiva. The Rambam believes with these words, I can show you the Mekoid in the Rambam, that Darkei Shulam is much deeper. It's not a practical, strategic way of thinking. Let's give everyone so there will be no trouble. No. Darkei Shulam, This is very powerful. So yeah, Darkei Shulam, there's the famous shot we all know, but there's the Rambam's way, and this is the deeper way, that it's not just a strategy. This is, of course, we should be nice to Goyim. If not, there will be trouble. But we have it also in Chazal that do it because Rabbi Yochanan Mazaka, why was he Magdam Shulam for the old Goy? Not because he wanted his kids to know, and then they won't bother us, and there will be good Shabbos Goyim. Rabbi Yochanan said, Kama harpat kui udi alai. This man has so much experience in life. Even though he's a Goy, he has a rich experience, so let me give him some respect. And we have it in a lot of, also the Rambam, a few times when he says that every human being could grow to big madraigas, he won't say Yehidim, he would say, Kol ish v'isha mikol bu'ay oilam, ashanot v'richa yoisoy, mikol bu'ay oilam. And also in Chazal, mikol bu'ay oilam, that even a Goy, if he chooses the right way and he believes that Hashem Echad is Moy Echad, he's doing the Sheva Mitzvahs V'nai Noach at his best, and he's trying his best, he could come to big madraigas. It's not like it's not the way we see it, that the Goy is nothing.
So how do you understand, Rabbi Levine? How do you understand Am Hadoim L'Chamayr or Eisav Soneh Yaakov, or how do you start Am Hadoim L'Chamayr? Start with that.
Okay. Let's see about Am Hadoim L'Chamayr. First of all, we should understand that a lot of Svurim wrote in the Agadomas and in the Svurim that the Goyim that Chazal were talking were Goy as Zmanam, but it always depends on how the Goyim around actually act. If they're nice and they even if Amadam Lechamar, it doesn't have to be the Goy as Manayni. It doesn't have to be for always. This is one. Eisav Soneh Yaakov is very interesting. There's no raya. There's no basis to say that Eisav Soneh Yaakov is a mitzvah or something that we should, because of Eisav Soneh Yaakov, so we should hate back. This is not what the Medrash says. It's very interesting. This Mamad Eisav Soneh Yaakov, people take it very, very far away. It's actually a Medrash, and the Medrash is on the words Vayishak Eisav Yaakov, Eisav kissed Yaakov. So the Medrash says, BiYaduah Eisav Soneh Yaakov. There's a guess that it was not in the Makor, it was not Halacha BiYaduah, it was Haloi BiYaduah Eisav Soneh Yaakov. This is the word of Medrash, Halacha BiYaduah Eisav Soneh Yaakov, or Haloi BiYaduah Eisav Soneh Yaakov. Elo Shanichmeri Rachma Voisishu. It's not a Mishnah, and it's not a Halacha Eisav Soneh Yaakov. It's a bitui of Chazal. It's a ozdrik of Chazal. Of course, every illusion of Chazal is very important, but we can't build a Torah Shalaima based on that. So yeah, there is Mamur Chazal where this is the Mashmuis, and of course we should remember that Yidden have their special identity, and the Goy doesn't have this heritage, this history, this understanding. And please don't become your non-Jewish neighbor's best friend. Stick to your own people, to your own brothers. That's not what we discussed. And back to what you said, and we should understand that a generation after the Holocaust and after everything that Eden went through in Europe, it was the very natural response, and it's a healthy response, because when you're a victim, you don't want to blame yourself. You want to say the perpetrator is evil, and I'm. So that way you stay. The Yidden and the Yidden at the Holocaust, they didn't believe the story. The Nazis told them a story that you're the lowest of the lowest. You're the verfluchte Jide. You're the worst of every other nation. And think about it. If the Yidden would be so broke that they would buy the story, there would be no chance for Am Yisrael to go on. So they knew we are the best, we're the holiest, and we're the most beautiful. And the Goyim are Mekana, they are jealous, and help them survive. And that's in the Jewish DNA for so many years. The Goyim should not tell us what to do. There was always Gezeirus against Torah and against the Yiddish way of doing things. So the response was, we're holy, we're special, we know the best, and all of you Goyim are nothing. That's very good. But it's not Negaya, someone in 2018 is in business, he will treat his Jewish worker one way and his non-Jewish worker another way because of all this memories we remember from childhood, and it goes to our subconscious. This is wrong. This is very wrong. Even today, if someone is a Oived Hashem and he learns about the Neshama of a Yid, and the Neshama of a Goy is not on that level, it helps him with Avodas Hashem, no one has a problem. But someone in the business world would treat his Yiddish co-workers one way, and it would be Mezalzel, the poor Goy, the worker, or the cleaning lady in your house. That's terrible. That's not the Kavuna B'chalal.
So let me suggest, you see already in the Rishonim sort of a machlekes. It's actually in next week's Parsha. By the Halacha, so Rashi says it goes dafka by Yisrael, and the Ramban argues, the Ramban holds that a guy also has a tzelem alekim, and therefore there's an issa of lina by eitz.
Interesting,
right? And in fact, in the Megillah, there's a raya to the Ramban, because the Targum Sheni in Megillah says that it was a taina on Esther. How was she allowed Bnei Haman to be on the eitz for many days? So from the Targum Sheni, which was a Tana, you have a raya to the Ramban, but it does see already in the Machlekes Rishonim of Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem goes on to the too.
Right.
Right. So you see already with the places. Jamtif says Chaviv Adam B'Tselem says goes on to Parsha Yisrael says the same thing.
Yeah.
So let me ask you,
based on the Mishnah. Just a second. The Pashtus in the Mishnah, when you just learn the Mishnah, you say Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem, and then Chavivim Yisrael. It makes a lot of sense in the Pashtus in the Mishnah that Chaviv Udam talk about all human beings. Chavivim Yisrael, Yidna on a higher level. That's how it looks in the Mishnah. Okay.
And look, the pasuk is talking about Bnei Noach.
Right, Udam Erishan, yeah.
No, it's talking about Bnei Noach.
Udam Erishan, right.
Bnei Noach. It says B'Tselem Elokim Asadam. After Adam Arishan, you could say Adam Arishan was Chayte, was Adam Kadmoi, B'Tselem now. He's not. It says B'Tselem Elokim is by Bnei Noach after the Chayte of Adam Arishan when he's giving them the Zayin Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. So the Mishnah is really just a pasuk, you know?
Yeah.
So actually, Rabbeinu Yoin and the Sefer HaYira brings that you're not allowed to be Mitzayir any Baal Chai, any Adam, he says, because of this Kibitzelam Olikimu. That's the Lashon. So let me ask you a question. Now your Rebbe, your child comes.
If I may, one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's also a very interesting Safru. You brought so many Mekoyas, so I want to bring the Safru. It's Parshas Kedoshim. So the Safru say, "V'haftu l'racha kamoichu, Rabbi Kiva mezek laguda b'Torah." So there's one of them Farshim saying that Rabbi Kiva says, you're talking about Re'ach, Yid, and says, this is the Klal Buri B'Torah. But when Azar is coming and saying, you talk about Udam Erishan, and what he's trying to say is, we're all in this cipher told us Udam, we're all in the same book, so you shouldn't even have to ask him. It's even before that, you should have the basic respect to all human beings.
Yeah, and it's a Yerushalmi in the Dharam in Parak Tes as well. And the Pnei Moshe actually learns that way. Pshat and Ben Azai, he says that he's coming to be Moshe. That like later, Rabbi Kiva Haftal Reacha goes to Afka Yisrael. So the Pnei Moshe in the Dharam says that it goes even on a guy that there's a mitzvah of B'Tselem Elokim Asas Adam to treat him with. So let me ask you, based on the above. So your kid comes home from yeshiva, and he says that das Gesende Schwarze Darten. Now, it's used today. It's considered very offensive to the members of to a black, to call it that way. It's considered a pejorative, just like there are words that describe Yidden that are not in such a nice way. What do you tell your son, or what do you tell the Rebbe? Do you say, listen, you're not allowed to talk that way. It's nivel peh. It's a dirty word. The person considers it an insult. It's the equivalent of calling a Jew some other four-letter word. And there's a Yerushalmi, there's a Sefra, there's a Pasik, there's a Mishnah. How would you behave? What would you tell the Rebbe, the principal, your child in such a case?
It's a very good question, and I had it in the past many times. It's interesting. I lived next door to an old lady in her high 90s, a Holocaust survivor, and she had a African American nurse. So they lived next door to us, and she was so nice, this nurse. So nice. So my kids asked me, when they came home from school with something about Goyim, they asked me, right, we're not talking about this nice lady, right? She's not like Goyim. She's better than that, right? So it was so beautiful because I saw that kids, when they just see reality, when they just see another human being helping their neighbor, they just see reality, they can't connect all these words going to this individual human being, this cleaning lady that is trying so hard to work and get her $15 an hour and go home, feed her kids. Why should I hate her? Kids have this purity in them. Kids are not racist by nature. And they get this conflicting message, and it is tough. Because, as I said, people feel very strongly about it. Actually, there was a very chushev, one of the tzaddikim, Talmid Chachama, that was very angry at my mom. He said he claimed that the Yidden in this generation don't understand enough the Atu B'Chatuni. The only way would be to focus on the Goyim, on how bad the Goyim are and how special we are. We need both. But I think it's very clear to you can't. The Torah alone, maybe you can see both ways. But if you live in 2018, you understand the world, and also you understand that it took time for after the Holocaust things to clear out. But by now, if you want to take away something from the Holocaust, from Char Ma'irapa, it's not to hate Goyim. It's the other way around. It's to see the danger of racism, of Nazism, of saying there's a better race and a worse race. This is leading to the worst things possible. So what you should take away from all these experiences is to judge every human being by what he is, and not judging groups. Identity politics is a dangerous game. Seeing people as groups. Every human being. Look at the way they treat others. Look the way they feel. That's the only way to judge a person. You can't say Chinese are that way, Russians are that way. It's usually not true. It's such a shitchi. It's such a artificial way of seeing things. There are black people who are wonderful people, and there are white people who are bad people, and there's bad Jews and good Goyim. Every person, of course, you have your connection to your family, to your tribe, but in general, that's I think it's important and it's tough. Yeah.
So, Rabbi Levine, are you suggesting that the Holocaust was because of racism? I mean, they had 200 some odd racism laws. A Jew couldn't do this. They measured their noses. They measured their faces. They had to be a certain height. They had to see.
Of course, it was all about race.
The perfect Aryan race. And Hitler Count writes that he wants to erase those races that are more inferior to his from the world. And he's suggesting that we who have suffered from racism more than anybody have to look at racism and say, oh my goodness, the dangers of racism. What did we learn from that?
Of course. When a Ashkenazi Jew is being racist to Sephardim and will not accept the Sephardi kid in a yeshiva even though he's as good, yeah, it's so terrible. You can't not see the equivalent to what the Nazis did. Of course, the Holocaust was all about racism. They said that we are the best race, and whoever will bow down to this special reine Rasse, clean race, and then the Jews are the inferior race. It's all about racism. And not only Nazism, also communism and other forms, other evil ideas are dividing people either by races or their classes. We Jews know that don't judge people by how much money they have. There's a lot of poor people who are evil and rich people who are good. Don't say that the 1% is evil. Don't take a lot of evil, put it into one box. That communism looked at it as a fight between different classes of people. Nazism saw it between races. The right way is to look at people for the truth. It's actually in this Parsha, the Sake Punim B'Mishpat. Look at the facts. Don't judge people by how much money they have and by the color. Look at a person's actions. That's the only way to judge a person in Yiddishkeit. Think.
Now let me just close off. Here's the Lashon Rambam at the end of Abadim. He says he's talking about an Eved Kenani. Afal pisha mutter levazos ha'eved. There's no din of a malbim pnei chaverei. He says midas hachasidos sedarkei hachachma shi adam rachman v'roidif tzedek. V'chein lo yuvazeyu. We shouldn't embarrass him. BiYaduah b'dvarim. He says ve'ein ha'achzorius va'azos mitzuya ella ba'ovdei avodah zarah. He says azos, disrespect, discourtesy, cruelty is only by idol worshippers. And he says if you're a member of Klal Yisrael and you teach somebody an Evet Kenani, like the lowest person, with you mavaza him, he says ein zu midarki achsidis and midas hachachma. Interesting, no?
Right. Beautiful, yeah. I want to share one anecdote. I donated a kidney a few years ago. The recipient is a little more modern American, but Orthodox, but not Hasidic or Haredi. So I he made a bar mitzvah a few weeks or a few months after I donated. So there was a lady, an old lady, I think from Florida, an aunt to my recipient, to the guy who got my kidney. So I went to Satmar. I'm wearing the flache bibehit. You know what kind of hat that is? Probably like the Yerushalayimers are going.
One that has a shiloh of oil on Shabbos.
Yeah. Okay. You always have this Rambam on the spot. That's interesting. So this lady is coming over and says, "Wow, that's so nice." And she said, "You know what? Always when I was visiting at the Sil, I saw this uniform, and I knew them as the ones who throw rocks and troublemakers. But now I see." So I told her, "You were wrong then, and you're wrong now. There's a lot of troublemakers, and judge them for what they are, and there's a lot of good people. Don't judge anyone for the hat. Don't give all the Biberitten credit for the one who gave a kidney. Don't give them the burden of the few troublemakers. That's again, look at every person. Don't fall into that pit. It's irrational. And it's so fast. When you call a worker, if you have in you a little bit of racism, you will class him. If he is black, you'll deal with him a certain way. If he's Chinese, and it's a mistake. It's a huge mistake, and it's very important that you bring it up.
The path to the Holocaust, the road to the Holocaust was paved with racism.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a shir with you. The Chafetz Chaim in the Sefer Mitzvahs Hakat writes on the pasuk Ger Loisanek Ger Yisaberes Mitzrayim and Bahaftemes Ger. So he says it's a mashal. He says just like a Gerim Hayisaberes Mitzrayim. He says now you should know better. See, Chafetz Chaim writes in the Sefer Mitzvahs, if somebody moves into your neighborhood, a new person, you should go and treat the person right. It's Yisrael who moves in. Why? Because you know what it's like to have been a stranger.
Right.
The Torah says, learn from your life's experience. So we who just lost a half of Klal Yisrael from racism, shouldn't we be chayiv out the same din to say, we know the dangers of this. How could we stand by when they call somebody else, a guy, a black person in the derogatory? It starts with them, but it ends with us. I think that's one of the messages.
I think I wanna bring one more clarification that a lot of parents, especially these days, are struggling to keep their house protected from the outside world, technology, and so on, and they would claim that that's the way it goes. You tell your kids how bad the Goyim are and how bad things are on the outside, so you'll keep them. So my answer to that is that's not racism at all. You can attack a culture. Of course you can attack a culture. You could say, look at the culture. It's so bad. It's so rotten. Technology. It's the extreme amount of exposure, objectifying. It's so much gossip, and the world is so tumma matama. That's okay. That's not racism, and that's not talking against Goyim. Against this is of course important. That the father shouldn't only focus on how beautiful Yiddishkeit is. Yeah, of course you can attack Goyishkeit, but this is Goyishkeit. It's not important that in the end of the day, the cleaning lady who is coming to your house should not get a fresh, cold cup of orange juice because the kid has to have no feeling for a human being that is not Yiddish. That's not helping. That's not the same. It's not even the same category. You can attack Goyishkeit.
In general, it's dangerous to define your Mila by the other person's chesaron. I'm good because they're worse than me. Right. You know, it says.
But sometimes we do it, and sometimes it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily
that shouldn't be the main thing. No. Yeah, that shouldn't be the main thing.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said it lately that someone who graduated from an Ivy League school would say, "Oh, I graduated Ivy League school," but he will not bash the other schools. He's proud enough. There's no need. We're proud enough. Yeah. Okay. Givaldi.
And especially today, you know, when you look around the world, in America or the world, and I could tell you that, we do business in China.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who works for me, who goes to China, is a Frum, and he goes with a yarmulke. I said, do you wear a cap? He says, no. He says, the Chinese think the Jews are the smartest people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
He says, wherever he goes, they say, if you're Jewish, you want to do business with you because you're so smart. He says, look at the inventions and the technology. Every time there's a new technological breakthrough, 50% of the times it's, echad me'anash that are at the top of it. So, today that there's respect for Eden, we could really talk to our children and say, look what a beautiful, look how amazing, look how much we've accomplished, etc. So,
without looking at the other side,
Yeah.
Chaviv Adam Shenever B'Tzelem, thank you very much, Rabbi Yasha Labin, and I enjoyed your shtickle Torah that you printed in Hapamon, and honestly, as Rav in Tom's River, Talmid of Williamsburg, an honor to have such an open-minded and intelligent writer on with us.
Okay, Kol Tov Shkoy.
Bye-bye. We have on the phone with us from New York, Rabbi Meir Schiller, who is says a shiur in Yeshiva University. He's an author, a well-known lecturer, teacher in Beis Shraga. He's also, for many years, was the spokesperson for the Skver community in New Square. Welcome, Rabbi Schiller.
Thank you very much, Reb David. Pleasure to be here.
Rabbi Meir, race in America is just an issue that just never dies. You have the Black Lives Matter movement, etc. So we're very cognizant. It was just recently in the news, the story in Florida where a young man was shot and, he wasn't charged and he was charged. So we're very aware of it as Americans. So let me ask you the following scenario. You're a boy comes into class. Well, you had two boys in the schoolyard, and they refer to a Black American in a derogatory word that's often used by Anshe Shleimenu, and they would consider it certainly a sign of disrespect. They would equivalent of calling a Spanish person by a derogatory term, or for that matter, a Jew. Every one of the races has something. Would you say that calling a Black American a derogatory term is racism asur al pi halacha, al pi hashkafah? What is the Torah hashkafah towards looking at somebody from another race in a pejorative or derogatory manner?
Right. Well, I think it goes beyond the parameters of race. To look towards the non-Jew in general, of any ethnic group or racial or religious group, to look towards them with disdain is something that, I think exists in conflict with our prayers in Valkein Kavalacha and Kivei Sevesh Tefillah L'chol Ha'amim, that in the Rebbeinu Shalom's vision, the non-Jew figures very heavily. There are other Zion mitzvahs. The Rambam says the non-Jew keeps Zion mitzvahs as a chelik in Gan Eden, or the Mabba. So again, whatever the nuance of the denigration is, I think it's very negative. And there are different peoples on the face of the earth, and each of them has its own particular struggle, its own particular tachlis. But I seem to recall that one of the Rishonim said that the reason for Dar Haflaga was that the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted to have different nations, wanted to have different peoples. It wasn't just an Oynish, it was l'chatchila creation of different group identities and communities. So by honoring those communities, we honor him, and by hoping that they will eventually come to see religious or moral truths, which many of them have in large or in part. And so again, I wouldn't even limit it to those particular terms that you're talking about. I think our whole chinuch system has to address the issue of the denigration of the non-Jew. Now,
the denigration of the non-Jew, I think many people would agree with you, but where they struggle with particularly, I think, the other races is, you have Ur Kenan, Ancham, Eved Avadim Yelachav, etc., which means it would seem that the Torah places him in inferior position, and based upon that is where these derogatory verbiage stem from. How would you deal with those or for example, besides Ar Kanan, you have regarding the Shmuel, it says, Am Hadoim Elachamar, Shmulachem Pa'im Achamar. So in effect, is the Torah relegating them to some type of an inferior position?
Whatever the metaphysical genetics might be here, I don't think that it yields animosity. One could argue that these nations and identities are not the same as what's spoken about in Chumash. One could argue even if they are, the response has to be nonetheless justice, charity, empathy, etc. So I don't think that should cause us to veer away from whatever our social obligations are. I take the example of our very own Ramapo. There's been a large influx over the past 20 or so years of Haitians into Spring Valley, and the Haitians struggle mightily in the school system and elsewhere. And, we're always on the side of arguing to cut the school budgets and to make it somewhat more difficult for them. And I would argue that, if we share the same turf, for lack of a better term, we should be concerned with the state of their education, the state of their development. Because listen, Haiti was a difficult place to come from, and to be transplanted to Rockland County is very difficult. But I think that just behooves us all the more to exhibit empathy. In other words, whatever the deterministic nature of those quotations are, and we can quibble over that, but whatever they are, they in no way exhort us to be indifferent or cruel.
So would you call it nivel peh? Is there an isser in it, or is it just a general philosophical type of are you being mavaza tzelem aleikim, which is in effect is being mavaza some I sold the Vlasei next week's Parsha because it's most of the Rabbeinu Shalom Chazal say that is hanging there. Are you in effect? Is it nivel peh? How would you define somebody who uses pejorative words to describe them, these disdainful, hurtful words?
Right. If it's face to face, it's needless cruelty, as you quoted before. It's just cruel. If it's not face to face, it's taking very real social problems, issues, and dilemmas, and trivializing them in a disdainful fashion. I always say, and I suppose the further right you go in orthodoxy, the worse this might get, but I always say, listen, these are very important questions and issues here, and how to deal with them. These jokes do nothing except make you feel good for a second. I very much always resent the jokes about all these matters. These are very important issues, social issues, and how to solve them. And, we might solve them by thinking more in terms of education, moral education, whatever it might be, but that's not the issue today. So I think it's trivializing in a vicious fashion very important and painful questions. That's number two. And number one, just face-to-face. It's just cruel.
And how would you respond to those who say, it's a small segment of the population that, commits 50% of violent crimes, so all these epithets are very well earned, etc. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think if we look about it, if you think about it in terms of our own community, if I would say that a certain segment of our community is particularly not learned, particularly not productive, I think that would create a larger sense of compassion on my part. If it would be my own people, my own family, though those of my children or grandchildren might not learn as well as others, it would create a greater sense of what can we possibly do. So, the truths of those statements, be they what they may be, but it would just create a sense, okay, we're in a problem here. What are we going to do about it? I often say that, one of the problems that happened with many of the non-white communities was that they sort of came of age and were integrated into a school system, an educational system, which had been destroyed by a lot of, for lack of a better term, social progressivism. So those schools became less and less demanding, less and less scholarly, less and less respectful, and that was particularly the system they were put into. So I think there are many, many social factors involved here, other than inherent ones.
And how would you respond to those who say, Ata b'chartanu mikol amim, and they'll quote, the very Kabbalah that the neshama of a yid comes from a higher place, rightfully so, that it does indeed say, Ata b'chartanu, we say, every Yom Tif, by every Shmoneh Esrei. How would you respond to that?
I would refer them to the Sefarno. The Sefarno in Parshas Yisro, who, and I don't have it here in front of me right now, but on Vihisim Segula Mikola Amem, on those psukim over there right before Matan Torah, the Sefarno says that we are a Segula Mikola Amem, and I'm quoting from memory, but it says essentially, L'hoirois l'chol min ho'anushi darche Hashem umidos, or something along those lines, that being a priest is to be a minister. We are to minister to the spiritual and material needs of all men. Now, obviously, we have other obligations in terms of Torah mitzvahs as well, but that's what Hatana would mean to me. Chosen to be an example, chosen to help, chosen to serve. And very often I get the sense that we think we're in some Atabachatanu means a Darwinian struggle, a dog eat dog. We're not going to give them whatever. No, it means fakir. It means that we are here to be examples of kindness and justice and so forth. So I'd instruct all the listeners to learn those Sefarnos. And again, just look at the davening. We get daven Rosh Hashanah, asking him to the Rebbeinu Shalom should come to rule over the entire Bria, and the entire Bria should recognize him. Why do we care about the entire Bria? Following this very exclusionist model that you're quoting, why should we care about the whole Bria? The Gans Rosh Hashanah davening seems to become almost irrelevant if the Bria is irrelevant. The Rebbeinu Shalom created 7 billion non-Jews. Following the very exclusionist model, he did it for almost no reason at all, or to serve us. They have no personal moral dilemmas. They have no spiritual goals. That strikes me as a frightfully cruel model of God.
So, in the yeshiva systems that you've taught, has there been have you ever discussed this? Have you discussed this with the B'chanchem? Because I think it would be fair to say that it's certainly not. Would you think that put it this way? Rather than leading the witness, in your opinion, how is it taught in our yeshiva system respect for both those our non-co-religionists and those who are not of the same race as us?
Let's find the right phrase here. Frightfully inadequately. Very poorly done. I think one of the major things that's missing is the ability to view reality from the perspective of the other. That, if you were a Tibetan or a Norwegian, how would you view reality? And what does the Rebbeinu Shalom want from Tibetans or Norwegians? What does the Rebbeinu Shalom want from somebody living in Kenya? And we don't spend almost any time at all thinking about these things. And I think that in a sense that's almost, again, I don't want to say chas v'shalom, it's a denial, but it's an inferred denial of God as the creator. So that's what should be done. Why it's not done? Because we are afraid. We want to make sure that we have continuity. We want to make sure that our people will continue to be Jewish and Shomrei Torah mitzvahs. And it's been a long time since there have been alternative models. German Orthodoxy had somewhat of an alternative model. I think the yeshiva world maybe in the 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe somewhere into the 60s had an alternative model. But, things have veered in the direction of the denigrating model. And so I think that's sort of historically what happened. And I think it's high time that we should try to work in the opposite direction. But maybe the time will come when those other visions, the Hirschian vision or some of those American yeshiva visions of an earlier time may yet come back. It's at present it's cloudy.
So Rabbi Schiller, I'll quote the Sipurno that you're saying. And he says, Afal pisha kol hamin ha'anoshi yakar etzli. The entire human race is special to me, right?
Yeah.
Right. So he quotes the Medrash. It quotes the Mishnah that says, "Chaviv Adam shenivra b'tzelem."
Yes.
Kol mokaim atim tiuli skula mikol amim, and he defines what is skula mikol amim. Ubezetiu skula ki tiu mamleches kehavin lahoyreis lechol hamin ha'anushi Rikvoi kulam b'shem Hashem, u'la'avdei shchem echad. So it's an obligation on you to educate the world, but not that it's a sense of entitlement that you can now look down on those who are below you. That's the Sipurna that you're obviously referring to.
That's pretty wonderful.
You know, I had an experience, a remarkable experience with one of my Rosh Yeshivas who referred to them, to another race in a derogatory manner. And he, quoted Ar-Chum, Kush, etc. And I was quite astonished because this is a person who had lost his parents, his siblings, his grandparents, everybody in the Holocaust. And the Holocaust started, basically, Hitler was the greatest racist ever. The Gypsies were an inferior race. The Jews were clearly an inferior race. Even whites who were not Aryan, who weren't blonde and blue-eyed and tall, were inferior. And because of that, we lost close to 50% of our people. And I'm looking at a person, which I think has raised our sensitivity towards racism on a human level, on a pan-world level, I think very greatly because of Hitler and the consequences of racism. And I was astonished that somebody who had suffered so much then turned around and used racism. It just rolled off his tongue. Could you try to give some thought to this, sort of paradox?
Well, I think that there is within the confines of Torah Judaism, one can find sources on both sides of a lot of these questions, and which sources one opts for, whether you opt for, Masiyot Tova Bayam V'Atam and Shira, or you opt for some of the more negative things, which you make the more important parts of your chinuch, has a lot to do with who you are. So I think that it is true that within the overall tradition, one can find the negative quotes as well. You take the example of some of the halachas about Tos Akum, Avedas Akum. So there's a whole school of poskim that wants to limit that to, let's say, earlier Ovdei Avodah Zarah, that it's not talking about contemporary Gentiles. And there are others who seem to have not much problem with it. And I think it has a lot to do with who we are, which aspects of Ma'amarei Chazal and how we go about processing halacha. How much does one like the Meiri, who wants to sort of take all Goyim who have midos and have proper character traits and wants to make them a part of the civilized world? How much do you like that Meiri? So I think we pick and choose, and again, this describes much more understanding than we can give it right now, but how much does one pick and choose, and what one picks and chooses? The Jewish traditions, Torah traditions, are very, very broad. I have to apologize to you. There's a lawnmower outside my window right now. So,
Rabbi Schiller, in honesty, the Miri is a das yachid, and it's not brought not into Shulchan Aruch or any of the.
The Rabbeinu Tam says that Christianity is not avodah zarah for non-Jews. So I think there's always been this attempt in certain cultures. A lot of it depended, and again, we'll get the whole discussion of how much environment influences halacha. But a lot of it has to do with sort of the backdrop of who the Jew was living amongst at that time. I think the crueler the Gentile, the more the sort of the negative ma'amarim were held forth, and the more things were going a little better, the more we went for the other ones. So I think Torah is broad, and which aspects we want to cherish. Risham Shmuel Hirsch wrote a letter to the Tsar in which he essentially took all the statements of Chazal, which emphasize kindness and goodness and so forth, and he applied it to Jews and non-Jews in Tsarist Russia. So it all depends, I think, who you are and who you want to be. I say this often in terms of the Bria in general, how one deals with the non-human world, with animals and so forth. My experience, and maybe we're going a little too far afield, is that those that are cruel to all humans tend to have a certain cruelty to animals. The kids who chase ducks and deer and so forth with cruelty. Maybe there's some link there in General Azarias, perhaps.
So, Rabbi Schiller, how important is it, given the fact that there are Ma'amarei Chazal that could be in either direction could be, understood one way or the other. Eisav, Soneh, Yaakov, Halacha, BiYaduah, Amadei, Melacha, Moer, Ura. On the other hand, we have Chaviv Adam, Sheniv, Rabbi Schiller. We have the beautiful Sifurna. We have the Ramban that says, Leisalon of Lasel 8 goes on Adi, who also goes, he's a Tzelem Alekim. The Pasuk of Tzelem Alekim speaks about by Ben Nayach. You have the famous Ben Azai that is a mitzvah of a Haftal Recha Kamoicha. He intimates on a guy as well, even though Rabbi Kiva doesn't agree with him.
Yeah.
So my question is, how important is it, given that we have both, you can make the argument both ways. You're a mechanech your entire life. Why is it important to stress the concept of, Tzelem Alekim, the concept of not speaking derogatorily towards another race? Mm-hmm. Convince me and convince our listenership.
I don't think two things. I don't think that kindness and justice can be divided that easily. That somebody who is going to treat the working man, the worker in yeshiva, the Guatemalan or whatever he is, with disdain and mockery, it's going to pollute and poison his own neshama. You cannot divide common decency from between one man and the other. That's my first response. My second response is, and I intimated it before, it has a lot to do with what kind of Ribbon Shalom we want. In other words, the Ribbon Shalom that is put forth as hating and disdainful of all humanity, it would hurt me a great deal to think that my Talmidim or anybody I come in contact with, my children, my grandchildren, people I know, I would just be so uncomfortable thinking that is the God that we're worshiping. So I guess maybe it's my personal existential, the push of my own neshama, which tells me you have to chop on those sort of sweet ma'amar chazal. You have to chop on ways in ways to make the Torah more universalist. And so I guess it's just what kind of God you want, what kind of Jew you want to be, and that's the one I want to be. The other one strikes me as hideous. I think back to many years ago, I was speaking at some yeshiva dinner, and we were honoring the local government officials. And I said to one of the people that had invited me, I said, "Okay, so you want me to convince this government official about your school, this and that?" So the fellow answers me, "I don't care what he thinks. He should chapa misa mashuna. I just want him to give us money." So, that kind of God, gosh, how hideous can that God be? Many, many years ago, I was involved with a certain yeshiva that was trying to sort of, play hanky-panky with its lunch program, and they were trying to get many, many people to come and sit in the yeshiva that day to bolster the numbers for the lunch program. And I refused to go, and I was having a great debate with one of my friends who was affiliated with that yeshiva. And finally, he got so frustrated with me because by my refusing to go, I was depriving them of another slot. So he screamed at me. He said, "Do you know what you are?" I said, "What?" He said, "You're a ganav." So it's humorous when you first hear it in a tragic sense, but that's what he felt. In other words, the Geneva here was not what they were doing. It was that I, by my not going, was depriving them of an extra slot. I can't live with that.
So let me quote the Rambam at the end of Avodim. And I quoted it before. He said that Afal Pisha Mutter Levazai Se'eved, halachically, he's talking about an Eved Kanani. There's no Issa, there's no Lashon Hara in Eved Kanani.
Yeah.
He says, Midas Chasidus the Darkei HaChachma. He says, it's Midas of Chasidus and Darkei HaChachma, the paths of the wise. Shia Adam Rachaman v'Roidef Tzedek. A person should be merciful and Roidef Tzedek. The Lo Yivazeu BiYaduah b'Dvarim, not to humiliate him. Somebody of a lesser opportunity, lesser position in life, an Eved. The Ein Ha'achzorius, the Azus, cruelty and disrespect, Ein Mitzuya, Ella Ba'ovdei Avodah Zarah. Only idol worshippers, the pagans, have this sense of cruelty. So is it possible that the Rambam is in fact saying that, yes, if you teach a child to be disrespectful to another race, a non-co-religionist, a more disenfranchised person, guess what? it's not going to stop there. The next thing you know, he'll be smacking his wife. Is that possibly what the Rambam is teaching us?
Well, even more than that, he's saying it's smacks of idolatry. But here's what I'm thinking. You know how much we schwitz and we bleed over trying to understand the Rambam when there's a Stidus Rambam and to find the right lumdus in the Rambam. This Rambam is pretty easy to understand. You don't need much of a pilpul shit to fend for this Rambam. So. We should care about this Rambam as much as we care about the Dikdukim in many other Rambams. Many years ago when we had one of these local school budget fights, and I said at that point, I understand that people are uncomfortable. The Orthodox Jews have to pay double taxes because we pay tuition as well. But I said, how about if the people in our community that were capable volunteered to be tutors and teachers or to help out in the local public schools in some way? What if there be an army of Orthodox Jews doing tutoring for the Haitians or any number of things just to show that we feel, the co-humanity of us. So with the Rambam, certainly, and there are certainly many things we can do.
Yeah. Well, recently they had the Spanish, the Latinos in the United States took one day off to protest the anti-immigration laws that are being passed by the current administration. And so we have a Spanish girl who works for us, and she took off to protest. And I insisted that I said, so some people saying fire them, and I said, on the contrary, we should pay them. Let me ask you, let me go down a rabbit hole a little. And it's really beyond what we were going to speak about, but this whole concept of immigration, which, many of us, would like, many people cheer on President Trump. And as an Orthodox Jew whose grandfather came through Ellis Island holding with one suitcase with a change of clothing and his tallis and tefillin, and just enveloped by fear, coming with a strange language, I look at these immigrants and I say, that's my grandfather. And I find it very hard to I find it hard to be empathetic for the government position because I feel that, we are all that immigrant. We all, if we didn't come through Ellis Island, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be here today. We would have perished in the Holocaust.
My ancestors came.
And what's your and I'm just curious that as Jews, should we be looking at this and saying it's really hard to understand or to support, not necessarily to understand, but to support the anti-immigration fervor that's sweeping the country,
right?
Because a boyer that you drank from its waters, you can't spit into. I mean, what's your feeling?
Well, here's the complexity of that issue, and let's leave aside America for a moment. But here's the complexity of the issue. In other words, as I said at the very outset, the Dar HaFlaga did give us different peoples, and I feel that peoples have a right to their own destiny and their own peoplehood, so that, England or France don't necessarily have to abandon their identities through immigration. So, again, it gets very, very complex, particularly in the case of America. What is America? But leaving America out of it, Africa threw out the colonialists because they wanted to have their own countries for their own people, their own place. So I think we should understand the complexity of when the shoe is on the other foot, that, Sweden is no less entitled than Mozambique to have an identity. So again, America is obviously a much more complex question.
I don't disagree, Rabbi Schiller, that a country has a right to maintain its identity, but it seems to be being done like with a wanton, almost like with a cruelty and a relish.
Sure.
And they have our jobs and cheering and rallies. And my feeling is, I know we have Spanish help that, cleans the house, who haven't been home to see their children in 7, 8, or 9 years because they know that if they went home. So you have a woman who's taking care of your child, who has her own child who she hasn't seen in 8 years because she knows if she leaves, she can't get back in. And I just look at that and I say, that's me. That's my grandmother.
Right. Well, again, certainly this notion of having my own people, and again, once again, saying that America's very anomalous in this area, but the idea of having your own people can be advanced negatively or positively. person can say, I'd like Scotland to be Scotland without saying, negative and crazy things about other peoples that have come to Scotland. And I think one of the marks of the current administration is that it struggles very hard to say things in a dignified fashion. I think we can leave it at that. That there's a certain crassness to it all. So that crassness, I think, should be avoided. But the issues are complex. But certainly the tone has to be a Nebbe Vuzomentin tone as opposed to a screaming, yelling, nasty, vicious tone.
Yeah, I mean, I my heart goes out to these people, and yes, there are people. If you're a landlord, you have to evict, but you do it with tears and with pain, and not with relish, and understand the pain that the people who struggle go through. I mean, would you agree with that?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, simple empathy and kindness is it's the Rebbeinu Shalom's midah. But again, balanced again with the notion that one of the greatest blessings that Hashem gives us, I think, is group identity. So, if as Europe overplayed its hand in many ways, in Africa and Asia and so forth, but now those places have much more of their own identity intact. So we have to be careful. We have to, I think, allow people to be themselves.
Right.
Again, America's very complicated.
Rabbi Schiller, thank you very much. As always, it's an honor and educating having you on.
Thank you much for the Hatzlacha to you with the show, and we're looking for many more svarim out of you.
Thank you.
Thank
you. So this year, God, Be'ezer Hashem, I'm going to be publishing on Mishnah Berurah both Chelik Aleph and Gimel. I'm going to be redoing Gimel, and Chelik Aleph will come out, and I do hope to have at least one more headline, God, Be'ezer Hashem, out this year too.
Really? One day we have to talk about your Leaf Naiver chapter, which much to discuss there, whether it applies to the non-Jew or not, but to be continued.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Schiller.
Bye-bye.
We have on the phone with us from Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Mordechai Yitzchok Friedman. He's a Talmid of Rabbi Schiller. He's a Talmid. He learned in Heichal Moshe, Talmid of the Keysmaker Rav and Forhand. He in Chinuch his entire life. He was also a Makurav to Rabbi Meir Kahana Zechron Levracha, Hashem Yakum Damai. Welcome, Rabbi Friedman.
Shalom, ve'in shalom. That's written in the Navi Yirmiyahu.
I'd like to get your opinion. The racism in the United States is a very divisive and oft, discussed subject, right? This President Trump, he's a racist, he's not a racist, etc., right?
How can he be a racist?
I don't believe he's a racist.
How can he be a racist? I'm gonna qualify that. How can he be a racist?
But Rabbi Friedman, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. I want to focus on a question. Okay.
Go ahead. I'm focusing on the question.
No.
He has a daughter. He has a daughter that converted to Orthodox Judaism. How can he be a racist?
So now let me ask you, you're a mechanech, Rabbi Friedman. A boy sees a black American, and he calls him in a pejorative term, which was used for many years, a schwarze, right, which they would find very offensive, and they would consider racist. What is the opinion what is the Torah's opinion about racism, about using pejorative words to describe people who are either not part of our religion or not part of our race? As a menal, and both a Rav, what would be your opinion?
Well, you asked for it, you're going to get it. The Navi Amos says that if you're not shomer mitzvahs, halo kivnei kushim atem li. In other words, you're no better than the blacks if you're not shomer mitzvahs. All right? So that's what the Navi has to say about racism. Now let me ask you this. The most anti-Semitic organized group in numbers, both in Congress and outside of Congress, are blacks. So you're asking me how we should treat Goyim who are anti-Semitic? Do you know that erroneously...
So Rabbi Friedman,
yes.
Friedman, I work with many blacks who are not anti-Semitic.
Well, the ones that you work with, let me tell you, at the workplace, let me tell you with a lot of experiences, I've been in different, and I speak to business people and so on. In the business place, you can be the biggest anti-Semite, you can be the biggest anti-black racist, and you're courteous, and you're professional with them because it's your job. You don't want to have tensions on the workplace. So it makes no difference, even if you know blacks who are not anti-Semitic. I'm talking about the leadership and the street. Let me give you an example. Black matters. Black lives matter. Okay? So they have a complaint about the police that they're going after them. I say fine. But what does Black Matters Life have to do when they go to Israel and they say they're siding with the PLO, with the Hamas? Can you tell me what the correlation is? That's racism. What does Black Matters Lives have to do? What does Farrakhan have to do? What did they have to do with Jews? Can you tell me? Besides Jews giving them hundreds of millions of dollars were given over the last 100 years by Jewish philanthropists and organizations. And what we have is the greatest number of people of a particular group are blacks or anti-Semitic.
Rabbi Friedman, the Black Lives Matters has around 1,200,000 members, and there are approximately, give or take, around 53 million blacks in the United States.
That's incorrect. No, your numbers are inaccurate. There are out of 320 million Americans, there are about 20 million who are black.
No, it's 13%, Rabbi Friedman. I may not know a lot about Eretz Yisrael politics, but if you Google, you'll say the United States is 13% black. So even using your numbers, that would be, give or take, around 42 million. But the actual, there is more than 350 million Americans today, which is where I got to my number.
Well, your numbers, my numbers I have from the news media, and they don't make, unless you're doing fake, unless you like CNN is fake news. Go
to Wikipedia and Google what percentage of the United States is black, and it'll be just around 13%. But let's leave that. We'll post that.
I'm telling you that I have multiple sources, and they all are mouthing is there 300. They didn't say. Just this week, I heard on the news media we have 320 million, and they fact check their Fox News fact checks it. Now, CNN claims they do, but we know they're fake news, and CNN is very anti-Semitic.
Okay, so are the blacks in effect then an inferior race? That's my question.
Say that again.
Do you support racism against the blacks? That was the question.
I don't know. I mean, when you heard the word race, it's different. I mean, Goyim are also we're a different race than the Goyim. I mean, what
so do you support racism again?
Say that again.
Do you support race? So then you said that if a boy would come home and he would say use a pejorative word like a schwarz against the black, you think that that's something you would not chastise him for? And if he used a derogative word towards a guy, you would do the same. You would not chastise him for that too.
I can answer you that from Chazal. Eisav, Soneh es Yaakov. Black, white, brown, yellow. Anyone who's an anti-Semite is. You can call them whatever you like.
So then are all Goyim anti-Semites?
According to Chazal, it says Eisav, Soneh es Yaakov. Chazal say Eisav.
70 umays, Rabbi Friedman. Eisav is one of the 70 umays that leaves over another 69 that don't necessarily have to be Soneh Yaakov, right?
No, it means everyone. Chazal didn't detail. It's a general rule. Eisav, Soneh es Yaakov.
Rabbi Friedman, that Chazal is on the pasuk, but it says by Eisav, Yishak, Yaakov. So it says Halacha BiYaduah Eisav. So it's talking about a particular encounter between the individual Eisav and Yaakov, and it says Halacha BiYaduah. It's not talking about the other 69 of the Ayin Umay Sa'ilam. So, but notwithstanding, you believe that every guy then is a Soneh Yaakov.
Eisav, Soneh es Yaakov is for every guy. Eisav was not a guy, by the way. Eisav was not a guy.
Yeah, but Rabbi Friedman, so let me ask you a question. If in effect we hate all the Goyim because they're a race that hates us, or that they're an inferior race, and they kushim atimli.
We don't hate. We only hate those
down at them.
who hate us. We only hate those that hate us.
So there's an assumption that every Black American or non-American and every other human in the world hates us. That's the assumption.
Well, there could be a milsa de lo shchicha, and a milsa de lo shchicha. There can be exceptions. There can be. Listen, when you have 100 Muslims coming at you, and let's say it only takes one to stab you to death or shoot you to death. And if you're going to go according to statistics, they took a survey on the Arabs in Judea and Samaria. The overwhelming majority want to kill Jews. That was a survey that was taken.
But Rabbi Friedman, let's not talk about those that are in direct confrontation with Israel on the borders. Let's talk about talking about the 8 billion people in the world.
How about every college campus in the United States? That you have pro-Arab and anti-Semitic clubs. How about Europe and London, where Jews are being attacked by Muslims, by Pakistani Muslims who have no Jews at all? Islam states in the Quran, don't make friends of Jews and Christians, kill them, crucify them, chop their limbs off.
So, Rabbi Friedman, can we then, Neman, you're saying as a Dava Pashut, that every other human, other than the 12 billion or so Jews in the world, hates us?
Repeat that. Human. You said the word human. What does that mean, human? It's just a classification. Were the Nazis that took babies and crushed their skulls and bayoneted them? Were the German Nazis human?
Well,
of course they were human. It's a classification. Are we mammals?
So what word do you want me to use to classify the 7.5 billion Homo sapiens on the world that's not human? Give me the word and I'll use it.
How to classify them? Whatever you use the word Homo sapiens. You use the word human. What's the nafkamina? What's the nafkamina?
I'm just trying to establish. So the 7.5 billion, let's say 8 billion people in the world, there are 12 million Jews. So we could basically go to bed at night and say safely that 7 billion, 888 million people hate us, and therefore we have a right to speak pejoratively about them.
I didn't say all of them. And talking about listen, you go into any moiset of whether any Orthodox stripe or shade. Look, you need to ask the question is, what is anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism in the ancient world was because we kept Shabbos, because we had Bris Milah, and we only believed in one God. And they found that disgusting and revolting. When Christianity raised its ugly head in Europe, it was Christian anti-Semitism. When Christianity was replaced, but it was still cultural, even with the Russian Revolution, the communists, they inherited the czars, the Russian pogroms. So you have religious anti-Semitism, you have economic anti-Semitism, you have political anti-Semitism, you have social anti-Semitism.
Rabbi Friedman, do you think that's going on today too? Is that going on today too? Like a lot of, economic anti-Semitism. I mean, just finished talking about how President Trump is the best president you've ever seen. And
no, for Klal Yisrael, he's the best president. Contrary to the fake news that says every time there's a new president, they say, "Oh, this is the best president we had." That's all fake. No matter Russia, whether it was Obama or whether it was Jimmy Carter, most of the two anti-Semitic presidents that we had, as far as recognizing Yerushalayim, 100%. Saving Jewish Hatzalas Nefashos is doche almost everything.
Do you believe that the world? You talk about the pogroms, you spoke about the Holocaust, the Inquisition. Do you believe the world today is the same that it was then, and Jews have faced the same economic and political anti-Semitism as they did then?
Absolutely. And not only in Europe, well, kula alma lo pligi, everyone who knows what's happening in Europe, and you speak to the Kehillas, the Rosh Kehillas in Europe, they'll all tell you, because we're Rabbanim, we deal with European Jews as well, it's schrecklich. Boycotts, attacking Jews verbally and physically in the streets of London, Paris, Brussels, France.
So Rabbi Friedman,
Hungary. Now, right now, let me interject. A few months ago, in Poland, Hungary, and Ukraine, there were marches of thousands of people, not like the dozen white supremacists in Charlottesville, but in the streets of these capitals, no Žid in Poland, no Žido in Hungary. All over the world, the anti-Semitism is like it was like prior to World War II. You're talking about World War II, the Holocaust. That's probably next to Churban Bayis Rishon and Sheni. That was the biggest Holocaust we had.
Basically, everybody hates us except for a few Yechidim. That's basically the message.
That's 100, and we only are surviving because Hashem.
Take America.
Yisrael b'tach b'Hashem.
Right. What about America, where it's the largest supporter of Israel? I mean, Israel, a substantial portion of its economy comes from U.S. government aid. Can we say the same thing, that Americans, for the most part, are very anti-Semitic? It's like pre-Holocaust, and they all hate all the Jews.
I would say that you're not dealing with Americans. You're dealing with their representatives in Congress and in the Senate. And most of them, if not all of them, are getting Jewish money. And except for the evangelicals, there are congressmen and senators that have no Jews in their district, and they're voting because there are groups in the United States and individuals in the races, both Democrat and Republicans, and they're giving them money. So that's why you're saying America is not like other countries. But do you know in the 20s? Do you know in the 20s and 30s?
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
When the Mishnah says Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tzelem, or when the pasuk says Ki B'Tzelem Elokim Asa Es Adam, and let's say, and because of that, we know Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the Gemara says, was Magdim Shalom L'Chalish Shebeshuk, where the Rambam in Hilchos Avodim says that a Yid should treat everybody with the greatest respect and kindness, not embarrass anybody. Or when the Yerushalmi and the Sifra bring that Zeklal Gadol B'Torah, that B'Tzelem Elokim Asa Es Adam, and therefore we should love a Jew, where the Rambam writes that they could be B'nei Olam Haba, and he classifies them together with Levim. Would you say that that's mostly antiquated and not relevant today?
What are the sources that you mentioned? The Kitzer?
Let's start with a pasuk in both in Bereshis and Dayaf, right?
Well, in Bereshis, that's the Mefarshim. The Mefarshim are discussing that, so that we don't know exactly, what they're saying.
But we know exactly. It's by the Zayin Mitzvahs B'nei Noach. It says Dam Adam Ba'adei Dama Yishasach Ki B'Tzelem Elokim. The Zayin Mitzvahs B'nei Noach. It says B'Tzelem Elokim, by them. And in this week's Parsha in Eretz Yisrael, Keysmaker, or next week's Parsha, and I don't know, I'm not sure what Parsha you read there. It says over the Ramban brings on the pasuk. He says it goes on a guy too because he's a guy that Tzelem Elokim. Or when the Mishnah in Avos says Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tzelem, Chaviv Adam, he's beloved, he's not hated, he's not despised. We don't speak pejoratively about him. Shenivra B'Tzelem. Is this antiquated? That's my question.
All right, so here, first of all, let's pass him from Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says in Aruch Chaim Shabbos, it talks about Goyim, specifically all Goyim. Shin Chav Tes, in Aruch Chaim Hilchos Shabbos, it says when Goyim come to Orei Yisrael, when Goyim come
surround them to kill them, and surround them to kill them, you're allowed to go out on Shabbos. There's no doubt that if there are anti-Semites in the world, and if somebody comes to kill you, Habal Lahargei Chashkem Lahargei.
Very good. That's one of the sources I was going to bring you. So according to the Mechaber, all Goyim have the cheskas of being anti-Semitic. So we paskin according to the Shulchan Aruch. We paskin according not to Ikar da Amri and not to a pasuk here, a pasuk there. We paskin according to the Shulchan Aruch.
But Rabbi Friedman, you're misquoting. You're distorting the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch
It says befeirush. It says befeirush. It doesn't make an exception.
It doesn't make an exception. If they surround a city to kill it, we could assume that they're not friendly Goyim. That makes sense, right?
No, you're not. You're being disingenuous. It says specifically kashvut heaven. It says there, befeirush in the Aruchayim, the Shulchan Aruch. It says if they come and say we want to do business with you, kashvut heaven. It says specifically kashvut heaven.
The Bach says it's a Mochames mitzvah, right? It's coming Shabol Saper to destroy.
We're talking about. I'm not talking about Mefarsh Ikar da Amri. I'm talking about what it says specifically in the Shulchan Aruch.
The Shulchan Aruch says.
Someone is going to be cholik. Are you going to be cholik on the Shulchan Aruch? Are you going to be cholik on the Shulchan Aruch?
The Shulchan Aruch says if they come to a Saper or a city on Shabbos, you're allowed to surround it, and you're allowed to go out to war to kill them. So if you understand that any guy you come to the city, you're allowed to kill them.
Even if they're coming,
go in and kill your Baba Luigi.
Even if they're coming to innocent, which sounds innocent, it says kash. You're denying the words kash v'teven. Those are key words.
Rabbi,
those are key words.
Could you read the Shulchan Aruch?
I'm not giving a shiur on the radio. I give a shiur on TV, on my cable shows, with all the Mara Mekoimis, and I give it all out right there in front of everyone. If someone wants to watch my shows, you can reach me at Rabbi M. Friedman, M as in Mordechai, just the initial M, Friedman at yahoo.com.
Rabbi Friedman, can you in effect kill every guy then because he has a chazak according to the Shulchan Aruch that he's going to kill you?
Well, if he's coming at you in a way that looks like you have a right for self-defense, you're not going to go. I mean, if there's an Indian of Tsar Balachayim, Alachas Kama V'Chama, they're included in Balachayim. And it's the same thing, I don't want to lahavdil, and police officers, illegally. If there's a reasonable doubt that their life is in danger, they're allowed to shoot.
So the Shulchan Aruch is talking about when he's coming to you else in a way that is dangerous, right? But if he's not coming to you... No. The Shulchan, you're not reading it correctly. It says it's a blanket certificate, open certificate. That you could kill any
Goyim that come to Arei Yisrael. And they say, hey, we want to do business with you. Hey, Jew boy, we want to do business with you. Or we say, oh, yes, Mr. Cohen, yes, we want to do business with you. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins that the idea of the guy is to kill us. And we have to go, Habola Hogacha, like you said, Hashkem Lahargo, Ein Hachinami. Where do you find in history,
I have the Shulchan Aruch here.
Very good. Okay. All right, so you have to go to a Rebbe. You have to go to a Rebbe and learn it.
Right. Goyim Shetzaru. Al Ayoris Yisrael. They came Shetzaru. They came to do battle. In Boal Asek Mamin, they came. They want your money. Ein Mechal and Aleina Shabbos. They say, I just want your money. Give them the money, and you can't do anything. Boal Iskei Nefashes. If they came to kill, Yoitzin Alein Bekli Zayin Umechal and Aleina Shabbos. Ubeir Hasmucha LeSapar. Afilu Lobo Elal Iskei Tevin Bekash Mechal Aleina Shabbos. Why? Because the Mefarshim say because it starts off with this. Really, they're coming to kill, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's
I mean, Arachaim Shin Chav Tes is cut in Vav. Yeah. And it is the title is Kol Pikuach Nefesh Deicha Shabbos.
That's 100%.
Why does it say Aliske Mamin Zakta Magen Avram? Right. She says The reason you're allowed to be mechal is because you're going to want to protect your money, and it'll come to bloodshed. Whatever. This is just absurd. So Rabbi Friedman, all the chazals that I noted, and I could tell you 20, besides the psukim that a guy is b'tzelem alekim, and the chaviv adam shenivra b'tzelem, etc., the stories with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the stories, the Rambam says how it's a mitzvah that Goyim have a chelik l'olam haba, and when he talks about b'nei Levi, kol ish ve'ish boy olam, the Ram says a guy could become kodesh kadashim.
When he's Magayer. When he's Magayer.
All of that, and the Rambam
when he's Magayer. When he's Magayer.
No, when he's not Magayer. It doesn't say anything about gear. Nor does it say in Hilchas Malachim when he talks about how the Bnei Elam Abba that they gear. It does not say that.
It says
so
Goyim,
all of this, and the Rambam is writing in the time of the Crusades. He's writing this. Is all of this today history and antiquated and not relevant anymore?
What are you talking about? I said before there's an Indian of a milsa de la shchicha. There are exceptions to the rule. If the intention is not to kill, then we don't kill them. It's only when it's clear indication of a habol lahagdacha hashkem lahargo. You don't go just like I mentioned. I'll reiterate, just like we don't do anything harm to a balachayim, tsar balachayim. We don't do that for anything. The Goyim are also tsar balachayim too. They're included. You don't go out. I mean, the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, "V'im tzod lehem," when Gentiles wait to ambush Jews, what do Jews do? They go to the Beis Medrash to daven? No. Chazal say, "Lokchim BiYaduah maklos." That's what the Chazal tell us. So everything has to do. You need to assess if there is a danger or there is not a danger. There's no blanket. You're talking about a goy that is good or that is pro-Jewish. Find in the world how many Goyim are pro-Jewish. And you'll see it's a milsa de lo shchicha. And a milsa de lo shchicha goes to the Rabbanan. What are you hacking in Kopferite? You have Rachmanis. Why don't you come to me and tell me that you have tears for Jews that are being killed by Goyim?
So when it says
what are you coming? What are you talking about Tzelem? What are you talking about Tzelem? No, as Tzelem as was. So are we Amma Nivchar or we're not an Amma Nivchar? Are we Amma Nivchar or we're not an Amma Nivchar?
It says Chaviv Adam on the Goyim. It says he's beloved Shenivra B'Tzelem. Right?
The Goyim. We're talking. You're talking, but it says Habola Hashkem Lahargo. What does it say about the Goyim? What is it? How about all the? How about
you people in the world who don't want to kill you?
How come Bamidbar and Lamed Gimel it says Ve'im lo terishu as Yoshvei Haaretz? If you don't wipe out, how about the Shivas Ha'amim? We were enjoined to kill Taf v'noshim, babies, children, women. We wiped them totally out. So how do you explain that? That's midioraisa. I'm not talking about mefarshim here. I'm talking about midioraisa. It says specifically when you come to Eretz Yisrael, the Shivas Ha'amim, you have to wipe everyone out. Taf v'noshim. Why did Shaul HaMelech lose his malchus? Because Shmuel HaNavi said to Shaul, to King Saul, you have to kill all the Malakim, everyone, not only just the king, the children, the women, the behemoths, everything has to be exterminated. No,
but why is that?
What do you say about that? Relevant? And Shaul HaMelech was a compassionate liberal or a compassionate conservative. He said he had Rachmanis on Agag. What did Shmuel HaNavi do to Melech Agag? You know, did he speak to him nice? Was he
so Rabbi Friedman,
well, let me finish it. What did Shmuel HaNavi do? Did he do like Rabin did? That he surrendered? He decapitated. Shmuel HaNavi executed him on the ground, and he said, just like
So
you
are all
made...
Goyim Amalek today? Rabbi Friedman, are all Goyim, has the whole world become... We've established the whole world as Eisav. Is the whole world Amalek?
The whole world is Eisav with the exceptions, and the exceptions don't count. A milsir you try to go with a yarmulke in France today. You try to go with a yarmulke in England, and you'll see what's going to happen to you.
So Rabbi Friedman, is the whole world Amalek too? I want to know.
The whole Amalek, kamo Amalek, kamo Amalek.
Well, Rabbi Friedman,
look, today, the United States of America today, with the leadership of Donald J. Trump, you can say, is Chasidei Umas Ha'olam. That's a nafkamina. It's a yotzei dofen. The evangelicals, even if their machshava is chas v'chalila for shmad, but that's in their minds, let's say for argument's sake, they put their money where their mouth is. They send tens of millions of dollars for Aniyah Yisrael. So I'm telling you, there's a milsir the evangelicals. What are they, 80 million? They used to be 80 million.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate having you. We appreciate your time. Thank
you.
We have on the phone with us from New York City, Nishtanah. He's an African-American, a black, from birth. I believe it's Chabad Chassid, who's a musbach, is a rav, is a teacher and a lecturer. Welcome, Nishtanah.
Thank you.
So let me ask you a question. Do you encounter in the Orthodox world what you would perceive as racism?
Most definitely. It's something as innocuous as walking into a shul and people trying to show you what page you're supposed to be on, or something more insidious is actually using racial epithets like the N-word or Schwarze.
It is. You see that commonly. Like, how frequently does that happen?
I'd have to say multiple times a day when I'm in Jewish spaces.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And is it any particular Orthodox group that is less sensitive, or it cuts across the entire swath?
It's across the entire swath, I believe. Do
you find the modern Orthodox more sensitive? Do you find the modern Orthodox more sensitive?
No. I would say it's about the same.
Multiple times a day.
Yeah.
That's terrible. And how does it make you feel when you hear that?
Sad for people who clearly don't really understand what it is to be a Jew or what Torah values really are. Somehow they skip the entire B'Tselem Elokim part.
And they call you. They will use pejorative words about you, even though they know you're Jewish.
Well, the assumption is usually that I'm not Jewish. And even once they find out, it's not necessarily always using pejoratives, but then using pejoratives towards people who are non-Jewish and expecting me to sort of, be on the same page because, we're both Jews. So it's just a sense of just racial insensitivity.
So the racial insensitivity is when they think you're not Jewish, but you say it carries over. Even if you are Jewish, they would still use racial epithets to you'd have them hurled at you or muttered about you.
I definitely have that. I've had friends who've gone to yeshiva. That's what their classmates would call them. Schwarze or monkey, again, the N-word, kushi. So it's a sad reality and things that still happen.
Now, have you ever had incidents where, teachers, rabbanim have spoken out and criticized people for doing that?
There have been instances, but I've never personally been experienced any of those. Again, friends of mine have, colleagues of mine have. I've seen the odd article in a Jewish magazine. Generally speaking, it's not really a defense that people come up to stand for or anything.
That's very sad. I think it's particularly sad because we've been, as Jews, we've been called things. I mean, we're just coming out of a century where for a millennium, we were called the worst things, and we should be, doubly, triply, quadruply sensitive towards something like this.
Well, not even sensitive, just more aware of even our history, and every year we celebrate Purim, and it seems to be cognitive dissonance, where we celebrate each year the holiday where Haman didn't kill all the Jews that lived in all the provinces to India to Ethiopia, yet most mainstream Jews treat Jews that look like they came from India to Ethiopia in a strange, weird way, and it's kind of disingenuous, like those communities didn't disappear once we finished the Megillah. Where did you think they went? Why are you so baffled when you see somebody that looks like a different way?
You're saying that when many people celebrate the salvation of Purim, they're only celebrating the salvation maybe of the Jews from Hungary through Lithuania, but in the other 120 countries they say, who cares about them? Haman could have killed them.
Just they sort of forget that's where the Jews were living at that time. So again, it's not a new thing.
So if you had to leave a message, if you had to put your imprimatur to our listeners, leave them with a message, what would it be?
To remember that when Mashiach comes, Jews are being returned from the four corners of the earth, not the four corners of Europe.
And therefore, give us a full message. Give us a 2-minute message. You've obviously suffered a lot with this and seen it and been hurt by it. So share with us your thoughts on this.
Well, my thoughts on that is I first started about Mashiach, and then secondarily, we mourn for Tisha B'Av, and every year we're talking about how Sinat Chinam is what we lost the second bit of Mikdash for. Yet, in a lot of spaces, we keep perpetuating different kinds of Sinat Chinam, then on the other hand, keep wondering why we're still in Galut and still in exile. And this can't be a very small part of why we're not. If we're in a Jewish space and we're treating other Jews a certain way, just on that level alone, just based on their skin color and their appearance, then secondarily treating other people who aren't Jewish but still happen to have a different of skin color and appearance than we're used to, it's all really contributing to us still being here. And if we want to get out of Galut, we need to start changing our thinking and how we interact with people and how our culture has existed thus far.
So if we see somebody speaking in a derogatory manner about either a Jew of color or a non-Jew of color or a non-Jew, what should we say? You're in shul and somebody's speaking in a derogatory, in a disrespectful manner. You were standing there. I was standing there. What should I say?
To say that it's not a right thing to do, and more importantly, to say that when people of those differences also aren't in the room too. It's one thing to stand up and say it when the person that's being insulted is there. It's another to also stand up behind closed doors to still reprimand people when they espouse those kinds of attitudes or use those kind of epithets. It can't just be when the person that they're offending is in the room.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Take care.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, bye-bye.